When I was a junior in high school, on the day after Christmas, a movie was released that shook the world. People lined up around city blocks to buy tickets and get into the theater. Reports were that viewers were passing out as they watched the movie. Church leaders were in an uproar over this movie. The box office went wild. The Exorcist was an unimagined hit, though pea soup sales did take a bit of a hit following the release. We've got a real-life exorcist story in the opening of Mark's Gospel. Jesus was in Capernaum, the home of Peter, Andrew, James, and John, and he went to the synagogue, the remains of which are still there. He was preaching on the Sabbath when a sick person burst into the assembly. Those who gathered there in those pre-modern medicine days with no idea of psychology or psychiatry immediately diagnosed the man as being possessed by an unclean, even evil spirit. That did not deter Jesus. He told the unclean spirit to leave, and the man convulsed, screamed, and returned to a more normal attitude and demeanor. And everyone who was there was amazed. They couldn't believe their eyes. This was something they had never seen before. He teaches with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him, they said. And of course, Jesus' fame began to spread. We've got a lot to do in worship this morning, so an extensive unpacking of that story will not be possible. But let's take a high-level view of the story, because there is something we need to understand clearly if this story is to make any difference in our day. We're in the beginning of Mark's Gospel, the first Gospel to be written. It is the briefest of the four Gospels, and it forms the framework for Matthew and Luke's Gospel. There's no birth story of Jesus in Mark. He just shows up at the Jordan River to be baptized as an adult, goes into the wilderness to be tempted for 40 days, comes back to Galilee and begins preaching, calls 4 fishermen to be his disciples, and then goes to the synagogue in Capernaum, where we find him in our lesson for the day. Mark has told us that Jesus' message is that the kingdom of God or the realm of God is at hand, but we aren't told exactly what that means until we get to Capernaum and the synagogue and the possessed man. It is this opening story of his gospel in which Mark is telling us what Jesus' mission is and what it means. Jesus has come to establish the kingdom of God, the realm of God, that realm of wholeness, justice, peace, healing, hope, and all of those positive things that Jesus is about to put on display for all people of all time. But that will not be easy, because opposed to the realm of God is the anti-God realm. It focuses on brokenness, disunity, fracturing, prejudice, injustice, enmity, fear, and all of those things that have the power to distort the image of God in us and cause us to live in ways that are diametrically opposed to the ways of God. By casting out the anti-God presence in the life of the man in Capernaum, Jesus in Mark's gospel establishes his mission. Jesus is here to tear down the realm of the anti-God and to restore the realm of God, the vision for life in which God created the heavens and the earth and everything in them. Jesus is here to bring wholeness out of brokenness, hope out of despair, peace in the face of joy, joy in the midst of tears, and unity even as voices seek to divide and separate. What was the source of Jesus' authority? It wasn't the government. It wasn't the religious establishment. It wasn't polls or popularity. The source of Jesus' authority was God's eternal word. The source of Jesus' authority was the God of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, the God of the Exodus, the God of the covenant, the God of the prophets. Jesus wasn't speaking and acting on his own. Jesus was speaking and acting with the authority of God. Today, in our ordination and installation of new officers for this congregation, we will place some in our numbers in places of authority, of leadership. Not one of the people being ordained and installed today asked for this to happen. In fact, we had to ask them. Through the voice of this congregation, God has called them to particular work in this particular time. They will face difficult challenges and choices, some of which will be especially difficult. But let's be clear. Their authority does not come from the act of ordination or their installation on a board of the church. Their authority does not come from the number of years they have been members of this congregation. Their authority does not come from how much they give or how often they volunteer. The authority of every church leader, teaching elder, ruling elder, deacon, and trustee, comes from God. And every church leader must constantly commit themselves to discerning what God is calling them to do and where God is calling us to go. But they are here, leading us into partnership with Jesus Christ to establish the realm of God here and now. They will lead us in confronting the realm of the Antichrist, all those powers and persons who would lead us away from God's way and onto a far lesser way. They will lead us in healing brokenness, setting right the injustices of our world, caring for the overlooked and the under-recognized, speaking for those whose voices can no longer be heard, calling for compassion and righteousness when it seems to be lacking. And in all that they do, they will work to lead us out of darkness into God's marvelous light. Now, having said all of that, I probably scared a few of them away. Church leadership is a daunting responsibility. So I'll ask you to pray for them every day. Encourage them in their work. Be interested in what is happening at the church and through the church. Surround them with your love and uphold them with your encouragement. And remember this. When Jesus was returning to God after his resurrection, he said to his disciples, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go." In essence, Jesus said, "All the authority I have, I now give to you. Please do something with it. Let's do something glorious for now and evermore." Amen.